What is going on, everybody? Welcome back in. Apologize right away for my voice cracking right off the bat in this video. Still getting over a little bit of a sickness. I'll just scoot up a little bit here. So my voice still going in and out. I don't know what this thing is, but it kicked my butt for a week or so. So I'm going to get right to the point of this video. I've realized that I haven't really given my assessment on Pete Carroll, and I guess you include John Schneider in this as well. I haven't really given my thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks front office, what I think. It's been a pretty polarizing, Pete Carroll's been a pretty polarizing figure. Certainly there's been a fan base divided, I think, throughout the last couple of years in regards to Pete Carroll. I think I've talked about it. I think you guys know that I do like Pete Carroll, but I haven't really gone into detail on why I think he should still be here and why I think he's the right guy for the job. So we're going to talk a little about that. I love that we're talking Seahawks. I've got a Mariners hat on, a Sonics jersey, and we're going to talk Seahawks football. So here we go, though. Just want to dive into it. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I saw something. I don't even know if it was a real article. I think I saw someone do a video on it, and there was like a rumor that John Schneider wants Pete Carroll out or something. I don't know. But it's a good time to do it because there are a lot of people in this fan base that are wanting Pete Carroll out. And it kind of seems like a bizarre time to me to want to move on from Pete Carroll personally. I don't really understand it right now. After everything that's happened, it seems like a weird assessment to think Pete should be. I just heard a weird bang. But hopefully I'm still here by the end of this video. But I feel like it's kind of weird timing for it. Years past, I actually understood it a little bit more, but not right now. I really don't, and I'll get into a few reasons why. First and foremost, I think Pete's built an outstanding culture in Seattle. I think there are very few head coaches in the NFL that have the pedigree and have created the culture that Pete Carroll has created. I think you've got maybe Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and other than that, maybe I'm missing some, but I think those are kind of your pallbearers for that kind of just organization and that culture of excellence or stability. Maybe not excellence, but I think stability is a better word. And I think that's important. I think Seattle's one of the few teams that have done that. Now, I want to be clear to any other fan base watch that I'm not knocking other coaches. Like, I think Kyle Shanahan is fantastic. Sean McVay is fantastic. But they haven't been there maybe not long enough yet to have that. They're getting close. Those are two guys that are probably like the next ones up. But I think when you look at like Tomlin, Harbaugh, Carroll, Belichick, Reed, they're all kind of in that category of guys that have just created that culture and the stability within their organization. You can like them, hate them, but you know who they are and you know what they want to do as coaches and as front office personnel, especially in Pete Carroll's place since he's the vice president of football operations. I'll say one thing too. I have no problem with there being criticisms of Pete Carroll. There are, and I'll get into some of those as well. Pete is not above criticism. There are some very fair criticisms of Pete Carroll. The drafts have been here and here. There have been like no in-between drafts. The first three drafts were some of the best drafts we've seen. 2010 was an underrated draft. Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Russell Okung, Golden Tate. Walter Thurman is a good player. Excuse me. That's what you want to see in the video. 2011, obviously, was an underrated draft. You got KJ Wright, Richard Sherman. Even like a guy like James Carpenter was a good player that they got in the first round. I'm probably missing somebody in 2011. Did I say KJ Wright? I think Byron Maxwell was in the 2011 draft. We know the 2012 draft. Bobby Wagner, Russell Wilson, enough said. Now, they had a lot of drafts after that where there were not a lot of good players taken. You had a couple decent ones, like Jaron Reed was a good draft pick. Ethan Posick was okay. He's carved out a nice career. But there were some bad drafts. I don't think they were as bad as some people make them out to be necessarily, but I think overall there were some poor drafts. And then you finally get into 2020 and 2021, and they absolutely nail, I guess 2022, if you want to call it that. They absolutely nailed the draft. You guys know the players, Cross, Lucas, Walker, Woolen, Bryant, Mafe, whoever, a very solid, successful draft. So one reason I think they had a more successful draft this year is that they finally, they just took it simple. I think this is a team that's overthought the draft in the past. And for the first time in a long time, they really didn't do that this year. They kind of just seemed to go, this is a great player, we're taking him. Whereas before, they seemed to really find guys that they tried and fit into their system, and it just has not worked out in some of these other drafts for them. So there's reason for optimism with that. I think Pete's had some great drafts. I think he's had some bad drafts. Listen, I know some people are going to sit there and say, well, Russell Wilson was in the third round, so does Pete really get credit for that? If he knew Russ was going to be that good, he'd been a first-round pick. And sure, there's some luck involved. But if you're going to apply luck to the good picks, then it's only fair you apply luck to the bad picks. If you're going to be critical of bad drafts, you have to give credit with good drafts. So if you're going to knock, the Rashad Penny pick, the L.J. Collier pick, which is fine, you should knock those picks. Penny's, I think, a good player, but probably should have gone in the first round. L.J. Collier's bad. But if you're going to do that, then it's not fair to criticize and say, oh, he took Russell Wilson in the third round, he should have taken him earlier. You don't get to do that. You don't get to talk about luck. There's a lot of luck in the draft, guys. Like, it just is. Nobody has any certainty on anything going on. Yes, these guys do, these front offices do scouting all over the place and everything like that. They do a ton of research, but there's still luck that goes into it. Luck in terms of who falls into your lap, luck in terms of guys turning out. If Seattle knew Tariq Woolen was going to be this good, they probably would have taken him earlier. There is some, element of luck involved in this. I feel like I'm kind of starting all over the place here, but I think he's shown with last year's draft and the draft capital coming up, I think he's earned the right to have another draft and kind of see this through. The Russell Wilson trade in general is going down as one of the best trades imaginable. Denver, it's been a disaster for them. And the draft pick Seattle's had already coming to fruition. And you're looking at a draft where you're likely going to have 2 top 15 picks coming up. I think if you were to make a switch in front offices, you're looking at a really successful rookie class this year, and now try to kind of transition that together and bringing in a new front office who may not even like all the rookies from previous years. So now you're kind of meshing organizational philosophies, and I don't think that's smart either to do that. I don't really understand criticism for Pete based on the record this year. I mean, almost everybody's preseason picks, I had them as a 6-win team. I mean, you can find countless power rankings on YouTube. This isn't a call out of anybody. I get it, but you can find countless power rankings. I had them anywhere from 27th to 32nd. I saw plenty of power rankings 32nd, making fun of the quarterback situation for this team. This roster was the worst in football, and they've been competitive. They're still alive for a playoff spot. If they win their final 2, there's a decent chance they get into the playoffs. Now, I know they've tailed off. They were 6-3, and they're 1-5 in their last 6. That stinks. But this is still, when you look at the body of work, it's a 7-8 team that was expected to win 4 or 5 games, and the coach should be let go. Like, why? What has Pete done this year that would warrant, a firing? You know what I mean? Like, if you thought the team was going to be not very good and was rebuilding, then, what were you expecting? They've been better than expectations. Then you get people that like to take Pete at face value. Pete will go up there and say, it's all about competing. I believe this team can win. There was a thing when they were 1-0 that he showed video of the 72 Dolphins after they beat Denver about going undefeated. Pete is, I'm going to let you guys in on a secret about Pete Carroll. He is a marketer. Like, he is a showman. He is not going to tell you what he's really thinking. Do you think any coach is going to stand in front of the media and tell you exactly what they think? Does any GM go up there and say, we suck? No. Like, of course, Pete's the ultimate competitor. He wants his team to know he's got their backs. There's 53 guys in that locker room. Some of them are on 1-year deals. They don't want to go into a losing situation. So, of course, Pete's going to hype up the team. Do you really think behind closed doors that Pete Carroll and John Schneider thought this team was going to win a Super Bowl after trading Russell Wilson? No, there's no way they thought that. They knew this was going to take a couple years. They know the talent wasn't there all across the board. They knew starting 2 rookie tackles was going to be, a learning curve. If they were really serious about competing, Kobe Bryant probably wouldn't be playing nickel. He's had a lot of ups and downs. They would look to upgrade that. Artie Burns and Sidney Jones would have played over Tariq Woolen and Michael Jackson. Now, Woolen's been better. I'm not saying Woolen should be benched, but those guys would have played over other guys. Woolen and Burns, or Jones and Burns would have been playing. They're letting these guys take their lumps. They know this isn't the year. They know this wasn't the Super Bowl year. Yeah, Pete said they were going to compete because it's Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's always talking about competing and we're doing this and striving for this. It's Pete. Now, do I think in his heart he believed this team could do something? I think head coach Pete Carroll did, but you got to separate head coach Pete Carroll from vice president of football operations Pete Carroll. And vice president of football operations Pete Carroll, I guarantee you knew this roster was not good enough. Then there's they got lucky that Russell Wilson's been terrible. Did they? Or did John Schneider and Pete maybe know there was some serious regression that was going to happen with Russ? They probably didn't know it to this extent, but I bet you if you went into some of their meetings, they're probably not as surprised as you'd think about this. I bet they thought Denver had a chance to have a top 15 pick. I really do. I think they saw Denver going to a loaded AFC with Kansas City, a loaded division, first of all, with the Chargers, Raiders are okay, and the Chiefs, and then AFC that has Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Baltimore, Pittsburgh's always feisty, Miami's on the rise, the Jets with all the draft picks, that defense has come together, Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, the Titans are feisty, and I think, they probably had an idea that with, kind of a weak head coach and Nathaniel Hackett, that Denver wasn't going to be all that great. Do I think they thought Denver was going to give them the number 3 pick? We'll see. It could maybe not be. No, but I think they thought top 15 was possible. I really do. Now, the other criticism of Pete has been the defenses. The defense has been, Pete's a defensive guy, and the defenses have been bad for, I would say, at least 4 or 5 years. It was tailing off 16, 17. It kind of started going down, and it's gotten bad. There's legitimate criticism to be had there. I absolutely agree. This defense has to get better. Pete is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach. He needs to get it right. I don't think Ken Norton was the guy. I think Norton kind of put Band-Aids on things and covered up for lack of talent, which is fine. But this team has got to find a way to really dig in, find the right talent, and mix that with that right scheme. They did a complete overhaul of the defensive coaching staff this offseason, bringing in Sean Desai from Chicago from the Vic Fangio tree and promoting Clint Hurt to defensive coordinator. And remember, originally they did bring in Ed Donatel as a consultant, but then he got offered the Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator job, so he took that. So they really were going into a Fangio-style defense this season and really, I think, redoing how they do defense. And yeah, it's been pretty rough. There's been some bright spots. There's been some really low lows. The talent isn't there right now on the defense, guys. I can tell you the front seven is lacking. Now, shame on Pete. That's his front seven. It should be better. But that's the point of the Russell Wilson trade, is to get those draft picks to help make it better. They've got some pieces there that they can work around, and hopefully the draft picks from the Wilson trade can help fill in the gaps. I can tell you this, the defense is not as far away as people are making it out to be. And if you can grab someone like Jalen Carter and he pans out, and even, I haven't gone over the names yet, but someone else at 11 or 12, excuse me, wherever you end up picking, that can change the defense around completely. What if Jalen Carter is Aaron Donald? You know what I mean? You don't think Aaron Donald on his own can make an impact? Absolutely. So I'm not saying Jalen Carter is going to be Aaron Donald. We don't know. But Gordon Seattle's even going to get Jalen Carter. So I'm doing a lot of what ifs here. But the defense, I don't think, is as far away as people are making it out to be. That's the other thing, too. Oh, this team's more than a year away. Pete's got them. They're not in good position. They are far away from competing. Another thing I'm going to tell you guys, nobody is more than a year away from competing in the NFL. Of all the sports, the NFL is the most open to competing. Houston, I wouldn't be shocked, competes next year. Excuse me, I should have brought my water for this one. I really apologize. This has kind of been like a gross out video in some ways. But, oh my gosh. I would be shocked if Houston starts competing next year. They've shown some signs this year. You've got a shutdown corner, Derek Stingley, and you add Bryce Young next year. That team could start competing. The Bengals did it with Joe Burrow. They had one rough year with Burrow, and then next year they're in the Super Bowl. So the notion that you can't turn it around in 1 year is insane. And this is not a bad football team. By DVOA, I'll be honest, I didn't check DVOA today. Last time I looked, though, they were still a top 15 DVOA team. This is a team that's a top half of the league team so far, even by record. I know they're tailing off, and I think that's part of the problem. Had they started 3-6 and gone 7-8, we'd probably feel differently, and we probably should feel differently. And like I said, so I know they've tailed off, but there's still a team that's 7-8. They're a 500 football team. I think their point differential is -14. That's about a 500 team, a little bit under. That doesn't mean they're far away from competing and getting back to Super Bowl contention. The rookie tackles are going to continue to develop. This is their first year playing a 17-game schedule. That is not easy to do at that age. And they've played every single game. They will get better. Look at guys like Andrew Thomas in New York and the steps forward that he took in year 2 and year 3. And I think you could see that from Charles Cross. And Abe Lucas, I think, has already solidified himself as one of the better right tackles in the game. And I think he's playing hurt right now, too. If you look at, he's having an MRI, I think, done on some things. So I think that's factoring in there as well. But, yeah, this team can absolutely compete next year. You add 2 studs to that defensive line. You've got money to spend in free agency now. It's not as much as some people think because you're going to have to make a decision on Nwosu. That light just really got bright there. Holy cow, let me turn that down. I don't know why that went up like that, but this video's been all over the place. If I knew how to edit things, I would take this out. But, so you've got Nwosu to figure out, and Geno Smith as well. You're going to have to make a decision there. Quarterback-wise, they don't have a quarterback. That's some of the talk, too, because Geno struggled the last few weeks. Listen, I don't think Geno Smith is in the MVP conversation anymore, and I don't think he's going to be a league MVP. But I think Geno Smith is a solid starter in this league. I think he is one of the top 20 guys in the league, and you can win with that. You can win with that with Lockett, Metcalf, some improvements on the offensive line, the tight end weapons, maybe another receiver option. You can compete with that. Do I think he can win a Super Bowl? Sure, I do. If Geno's able to take care of the ball and they can kind of get the offense back to where it was in the beginning, middle of the season, yeah, I think it is. And you have the luxury, if Geno does struggle, you can move on next year as well. So, and I would look at drafting a quarterback in the mid-rounds if I was Seattle. But I do think you have a quarterback that's at least stable. And I think that is good enough to win in the league. So, do I see Geno Smith hosting a Lombardi? I don't know. But I do think it's enough to get this roster over the top, especially if you can make those defensive improvements and maybe prove that interior of the offensive line a little bit. So, and I think with what they're trying to do on defense with this coaching staff, I don't think it was meant to be a one-year thing. I think this was meant to be a bit of a process. So this video is kind of all over the place. There are fair criticisms of Pete Carroll. There absolutely are. I understand where people are coming from, but the notion that this year is the year that makes you go, yep, I'm done with Pete, is odd to me. It really is. Now, if you've been on that train for a few years and your thought is listen, Schneider's made these trades, that's great. They've got the draft picks. I don't know if Pete's the right guy to take him over the top. I don't agree, but that's fair. I understand that assessment. 2 things I also want to add is, I've seen people go, well, John Schneider's the trade with Russ. Pete was against it, actually, and John Schneider wanted to do the trade last year to the Bears that was on the table, and Pete vetoed it. I'm going to defend Pete on that. If you're a head coach in the league and you've got, whether you think Russ is an elite franchise quarterback or not, you've got a good quarterback, it's hard to let go of that. It is hard. No matter what draft picks they're dangling over you, it is hard to turn down winning seasons and say, you know what, this guy isn't good enough to put us over the top. We don't have the draft capital. We can get that now with trading him. It is hard to do that. So I commend Pete at age 72 for agreeing to do that finally. Pete could have easily been like, you know what? I'm rolling with Russ. I've got 3-4 more years left. Let's just see if maybe Russ can catch some fire. We can nail a couple middle draft picks. Excuse me. And it can put us over the top. But he didn't do that. He went and agreed to do the trade with John. Pete hired John. So you can't give John all this credit and be like, oh, it's just John. Well, then thank goodness Pete hired John. He deserves credit for hiring John Schneider then, too, if you're someone that thinks Schneider's great, but Pete's not. I know people that want them both fired. There was one more thing I was going to add. Oh, and then I won't name names here, but there was a certain statistical analyst person on Twitter last year that was baffled as to why Cliff Kingsbury was on the hot seat, but Pete Carroll wasn't. I mean, do you need to look at the resumes on Cliff versus Pete? I mean, Pete's a national champion winner, Super Bowl winner. Cliff Kingsbury has won a Liberty Bowl, I think, at one point. Like, resumes do matter. Pete Carroll's won at every level. He's won national championships. I know there was some stuff at USC. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won conference championships. That stuff doesn't happen by accident. You look at every coach that's won a Super Bowl. There's a few in there that are, how did they do it? But the majority of them are Hall of Fame guys that knew how to win. And I think Pete is a guy that knows how to win. Eventually his time will be up as a head coach. I don't think it's now. And I think at the very least, you have to let them see this Russell Wilson trade through. I think it would be really tough to transition front offices sort of in the middle of this thing. Now, if next year they do a draft and things start going south, maybe there's a conversation to be had about Pete retiring. But right now, I think Pete is the guy. I think John's the guy. And I think this organization is in good hands. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please keep it polite. Keep it kind. We can listen to all sides of it. I don't agree with Pete being out if that's where you go and that's what you think. But I think it's a fair take, and I think there are valid reasons for it. So if you're going to argue it, present it with valid reasons. No hate here. We're all Hawks fans. We all want this team at the end to win a Super Bowl. We're all in the same boat here. Whether you love Pete or hate Pete, I will agree we all want this team to win a Super Bowl. So that's all I got. Please like, please comment, and please hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Go Hawks. Peace.